This week, millions of people, maybe even billions of people across the world celebrated New Year's, the end of 2024 and the rise of 2025, with the usual cavalcade of New Year, New Me, people advocating for themselves, saying they're going to make new goals, they're going to be different this time, they have something that they want to do and they want to accomplish. And I understand why people make these goals, but before we go on too much more into that, I want to introduce you to a radical concept, something I haven't heard expressed elsewhere, but has a lot of validity in my own life, which is that the new year is year round. Every day is, in fact, New Year's for a whole host of reasons. It doesn't have the same import that people put onto it, but we're going to go ahead and talk about why that is. So before we do that, let's go into why do people make goals on January 1st? Again, it's the end of a year. There are certain cycles that people have where this year has now passed, they can put it and then shelve it mentally away. There are a lot of businesses and other entities that start up on a new calendar year and treat it as a new item. It is a refrain, it is getting rid of the old and then coming back into the new. After all, once you pass Valentine's Day in 2024, once you pass Martin Luther King Day if you're in the United States, once you get past, spring break, none of those things will come back again, but you will come back again 1 year later and a bit older. And so we think of January 1st as this new year, a time to reset what had happened in the past, to make a new accounting of the old. And so people treat this new year as an inciting incident. If they had to pick anything, if they had to pick a Polaris, a North Star, if they had to fling something at a dartboard, they wanted to hit the center. And what better way to hit the center than to start with new goals, a new perspective with themselves on a new year? And so that's why people choose to do this on January 1st. But I want to get into why I said this somewhat radical idea of the new year is year round. It can happen to anyone at any time. Any arbitrary day could be, August 17th could be your new year. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people, when they're trying to make goals, change themselves, make new habits, right? They lean into this idea of, I'm going to start on the new year as the inciting incident. That's a great place to start. We see people make a dedicated start to a new lifestyle with many other avenues, such as religious, or if they're trying to quit or start up a new habit. You see gym memberships spike on January 1st for much this reason. If you're not in the know of that, now you are. But it can be any day of the year. And the reason for this is habit formation. So there are studies that have been done on habit formation suggest that it takes 19 consecutive days of doing a thing for it to become a habit. That is to say, if you can keep up with something for the first 3 weeks, you are more likely to continue it than you are to stop it. Now this means it can lead people into a negative downward spiral, right? If you're doing something bad 19 days, you go 19 days without working out, you go 19 days without cooking your own food, you do 19 days without cleaning up your yard. You go 19 days without going for a run. You go 19 days working for a job that you really hate and thinking about how you hate it. Yes, this is all habit formation, but this is negative habit formation. You can have positive habit formation. People who manage to get through the first month of a gym membership with 19 days in the month of January are more likely to continue until the end of the year. Right now, I've been playing a lot of Dance Dance Revolution. I've been going at that for quite a while. When I was first learning to get into that game, it just felt very hard every day to play anything whatsoever, especially to just go back when you're tired. But after about a month, without knowing this study, without it being a placebo, I saw that, this is my regular rhythm. This is the thing that I want to do. There have also been studies done on animals. Now, I want to say things that you have taught to animals don't necessarily have applicability to the human mind. I'm of the perspective, me personally, take it with a grain of salt if you would will, that I think animals and human beings are qualitatively different, not quantitatively by their IQ different. But studies that have been done on animals, such as farm animals, hens, chickens, things, sometimes ravens, that common farm animal, have shown that actually animals have an interesting habit formation logic to them as well when you're teaching them a new goal or a new skill set. If you teach an animal how to do something and you reward it, positive reinforcement, you give it a treat, you give the dog a treat whenever it sits correctly, right? Or whenever it takes any action or does any trick. If you want it to learn that thing right now, you want it to be very quick, then just continuously reward it every time that it does the thing when you prompt it. This will cement the habit, the pathways, the synapses in its head, and it'll burrow in there and it'll learn that habit very, very quickly. But what they found with animals actually is that if you teach them some kind of task or trick and you do it very quickly and you reward them every single time, right? Continuous, It's continuous feedback. Right, continuous reinforcement cycle. If you give an animal a continuous reinforcement cycle, then it will learn very quickly to do the thing, but after a few times of not being given the treat, it'll start misbehaving. If you ask it to learn this task and then 6 months later try and get it to do it again, it won't remember how to do that, in fact. And what's interesting is that animals operate on a different way when you talk about variable reinforcement schedule. A variable reinforcement schedule is if you tell the animal to do a thing maybe on Tuesday, and then you give it a treat, and then Thursday you give it a treat, but Sunday you ask it to do the same thing and you just pet them and shower them with affection. You can consider that a treat, but you're not giving them the actual thing that goes in their mouth. I'm thinking about dogs here, and it works for cats and other animals as well. You can even see people do tricks with octopi, as we've seen, on YouTube Shorts and the like, if your feed is as inundated with nonsense as mine is. Now, this is a variable reinforcement schedule, and I want you to think about this in the context of human beings. Again, I think human beings and animals are very different, but this has a lot of applicability, at least as I've seen in my life. If you have something and you reward yourself with, say, ice cream, or with the dopamine of running, or something to this effect, some treat for yourself, then when you stop giving yourself that treat, if you've done it every time, that is part of the habit. That is part of the quadrant of habit formation that you talk about when people are talking about trying to break negative or bad or unproductive, let's say, habits. But if you don't reward yourself every time, if doing the thing is its own reward, then instead of getting the extrinsic reward of the food or the extrinsic reward of, in the case of the animal, showering it with affection, they get a more intrinsic reward in the case of a human being. Yes, doing the thing is its own work. This is why, for instance, when I was joining the military, some personal lore about myself. That idea that's common, it'll seem so common, it seems laughable to me now, of, oh wait, well actually working out is fun and I enjoy working out. That sounded crazy to me. I was a very scrawny kid. Didn't have any history working out. I didn't have any history putting myself to that kind of physical limit. I did some sports when I was younger, but the idea of just heavy barbell, heavy bell go up and down, make sad voice go away, this sounded ridiculous to me. But as I started doing that more and more over the course of my time in said military, what I learned is that actually there's an intrinsic reward to the dopamine. There's also an intrinsic reward that feels almost separate of that chemical, like Neil deGrasse Tyson zeros ones makeup of the universe answer, where you do feel like you've accomplished something and you've done something of great standing. Now, why do I bring all of this thing up about constant reinforcement schedule versus variable reinforcement schedule versus internal versus external? Why are we talking about animals in the first place? Because if you talk about animals and you think about this and the idea gets in your mind, it kind of cements into you the idea that this also works for you as a human being. Habit formation works for you as well. I've seen many people who do NaNoWriMo, National November Writing Month, the challenge. For those of you who don't know, NaNoWriMo is something you can do in the month of November. Takes 30 days, write a 50,000 word book, right? In the spirit of it, it is one continuous book, but it could be a series of plays, or it could be a series of poems or short stories or the like. But what it breaks down to is that 50,000 words divided by 30 days is something like 3,600 or some big number of words every single day. This is multiple Word document pages, single spaced every day. And my own experience going through NaNoWriMo and watching other people go through it is that a lot of people who don't consider themselves writers, who are using that as the clean break to get them interested in writing, a new positive habit that they want to form, a new creative pursuit that they want to endeavor upon and strike out into the wilderness with nothing but a lantern and a hatchet over a new moon. They actually find themselves writing after NaNoWriMo. They find themselves continuing because they've gone through that 30 days, they've gone through the 19 days, and also because you don't get external validation for doing something like writing until it is presented at the end, right? I know someone who went through writing for years, literally decades, and this was their internal item. This is the thing that they had formed as a habit. On the intrinsic reward of liking writing for what it was, they only got paid out, as it were. They only got the financial reward. They only got the public success, the external reward, literally years after they started. And that is a natural consequence of you internalizing this idea that every day is a new day. If every day is the New Year's, then any given day, any given impetus that is strong enough for you personally is more than enough for you to decide that, I do want to start that positive course correction. I do want to take control of my finances. I do want to learn how to cook a bit more. I do want to live in a place that looks a bit nicer, right? All of these things, whatever motivates you in a positive, uplifting sense, not necessarily chasing after ghosts and keeping up with the Joneses, but whatever you want for yourself, right? This is why I mentioned the idea of like when you're trying to break negative habits like addiction. Any given day that you can choose to start is a great day to start as long as it's personally meaningful to you. So now I do want to say about this idea of every day is New Year's. I'm not in any way saying, but I am going to take the time to discuss this. I'm not in any way saying that we're immune to the past, right? Like for instance, I cannot lift 400 pounds, right? I can't do that. I cannot deadlift some insane number because all of the history and the consequences of my own decisions in the past have precluded that from happening and being something that I want today. Also, people have things that have either happened to them or they've participated in that cause them to have memories. Those memories are kind of embedded inside of them, and the process of reliving your memories can kind of put you back in a state of mind of doing that, lapses you back into the old roadways, as it were, the old synapses. You're not immune to the past. In fact, this is something I was thinking about because I am planning out how I'm going to discuss Johto, the Generation 2 of Pokemon, which is all about personal mythos, which is the history of culture, your personal history, your own experiences, how these things contend with the present, the inevitable present, as it were. I think that's the name I'm going to go with for there. Also, this is not to say that we're always to blame or never to blame. Think about that. For the consequences of our own environments, whatever that is. Environments can be our relationships. Environments can be where we live physically in the world. Environments can be the kinds of people that we consort with and the people that input their own ideas into the world, into us, that for which we are receptacle of their experiences and their habits and the consequence of their decisions, right? This is why one of the things when you're getting over something addictive is that you're told you need a new circle of friends because if all of your friends like thing A that you want to like remove from your life, then if they all like thing A and you're the odd person out, peer pressure is going to be a phenomenal force to get you back into it. So we're all not victims, but we are all the consequence of the environment we have grown up in, the environment we have created for ourselves, the consequences of the actions of others, and the consequences that we have of the actions that we've taken ourselves. And the way that I like to sum all of this up, because, we've already talked about the benefit of you can start any one given day, as long as it's personally meaningful to you. And if you can get over the hump of about 3 weeks of doing it every day, you can start to turn extrinsic into intrinsic reward and get the new habits that you want. You can live that new life in 2025, but it doesn't have to be in 2025. It could be in January. It could be in the 4th of this month, right? Using the example of when we're recording this right now. So the way I want to think about it, you can kind of reconcile all this habit formation, these new goals you want to pull, this lifestyle that you desire for yourselves, this idea of New Year being some event of consequence that you want to start up with, is how do you reconcile that with all of the baggage, basically, like the Ramona Flyers, Scott Pilgrim versus the World baggage of odds and ends and knickknacks and crud that you've somehow been bringing forward into the new year? How do you stop yourself from doing that? Well, the way that I think of it is, this is by a guy named Brian Durandal, right? Who sadly he passed away several years ago in a negative sense. I hope he is doing well, however he is out in the world. But he wrote a lot of fan fiction. And he wrote Kion Big Damn Heroes. If you're a fan of Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, or you're a really big fan of fan fiction, then you'll know who this person is, right? He was on the Pit of Vols and elsewhere. Now, he actually has a character in Kion Big Damn Heroes, which is Kion, the main character, the main male character of the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, that ancient anime. And series of light novels. And in Kion Big Damn Hero, he has the ability to time travel. And so how does he reconcile himself, the past, and the future? Now, I know you're already, if you're the kind of person who's like, why is he talking about fan fiction time travelers in a thing about how we can start every new day? Maybe my content just isn't for you. Like, maybe go, wait until the first of the next year to go ahead and, raise your glass and promise this year will be better, gosh darn it. But if you are following the trend, what this character does is he has a small conversation which he says, actually, he thinks of the past, the current, and the future as 3 separate versions of himself. And he says, the past me is woefully incompetent and always messing things up. Future me is an asshole who always thinks that I get everything wrong. present me is actually just fine. Well, I want to change that and flip it. And this is the way that I think of it, right? Is that you want to live in such a way, not that past you is incompetent or always messing things up. What you want to do is you want the past you to be someone that has accomplished a lot for whom you're grateful for. And you want the present you to be the person that will make the new present you, the new eternally present you as you experience time, grateful for the actions that you've taken in the past. So do things today that suck because tomorrow you will be thankful for past you. And then what you hope for future you is that future you is the kind of person who will change past you more into a person for whom you can be appreciative. And so with all of that out of the way, I know we're recording on the 4th of January. I know this is a very short stream. I know a lot of you are going to be surprised because I've had videos where it takes me 17 minutes to get to the end seat. We might even be over at 15:30, 17 minutes over here in this video. But I want to say, even though it is the 4th of January, for whatever you've got going on, Happy New Year's. Whew, that's good. It's apple cider, by the way.